Oh, so these are the notes for chapter 13. The reading starts on page 89, goes till page 93, so you should be reading along while you take notes. So we have the guy reading here. So this is all about westward migration leading to conflict with American Indians. So first off, to talk about the shift westward. American Indians actually once occupied all of the United States. However, the advancing line of settlement and diseases from Europeans severely reduced their population and pushed them further west. So how did the Europeans impact the lives of Americans? Well, they severely reduced their population and pushed further west, right? Now I'm going to talk about the impact of the railroad. So in 1869, the Transcontinental Railroad was completed. So the first thing you need to know about it was when it was here completed. And then what did it do? Well, it actually reduced the journey from New York to San Francisco from 6 months to 10 days. So now it's easier than ever to travel across the country. So what did the Homestead Act of 1862 do? Well, it gave 160 acres of government land to any settler, but there were some requirements for it. The settler had to build a house and raise crops on that land, and after 5 years they would own the land. Until then, it was actually government land, right? And now these tracks actually went through a lot of American Indian land as well, and a big part of that was building through all of this land. You had buffalo. Now, what did the American Indians do with buffalo? Well, they actually hunted them. So first off, buffalo meat was the main form of food. For the Native Americans. They also used the fur as clothing and used bones to make tools. So buffalo are super important to the lifestyle of Native Americans, but because they kept getting in front of tracks and blocking trains, railroad companies turned to massive buffalo hunting parties with thousands of men with rifles to slaughter buffalo. Now, because of all of this, Native Americans started to push back, and what that led to was what were called the Indian Wars. And the Indian Wars often did not go very well for the Native Americans. U.S. governments technology resistance by Native Americans futile. And when they were defeated, they were moved on to reservations. One of the biggest is the Battle of Little Bighorn. So this was fought by the Sioux Indians against the federal government. In 1875, miners found gold in the Dakotas on Sioux land and tried to relocate the Sioux. General George Custer led the attack with 264 soldiers, but they were actually killed by Sioux. So this is one of the times that the federal government actually lost a major battle. Another major battle is the massacre at Wounded Knee. The Sioux chief, Bigfoot, camped at Wounded Knee in the Dakotas in 1890. U.S. troops attacked the chief and his people and slaughtered 300 Sioux men, women, and children. So all of this fighting leads to this emergence of the reservation system. So first off, what are reservations? Well, reservations were smaller and less desirable land that Native Americans were forced to occupy. So what was the main goal of this reservation system? Well, this is on page 91, and the main goal of the reservation system is to bring Native Americans under control of the federal government and to minimize further conflict. They also were designed to encourage Native Americans to adopt the culture and society of white settlers, right? Now that was the primary goal, but there were many issues with these reservation systems. What were some of those issues? Well, mainly, it deprives Native Americans of their traditional lifestyle. Many Native American tribes were hunters and not farmers, and they were what's called nomadic, or roaming around the area hunting with the animals. And the government confined these nomadic tribes to a single place, which they were not used to and did not know how to adapt to. And another major issue is that they actually forced enemy tribes to live on the same reservation, which caused many conflicts within those reservations, right? So now if you turn to page 92, you can see different factors that are eroding Native American control of the West. So the first factor is forced removal. In 1830, Congress ordered the removal of all Native Americans to west of the Mississippi. This led to the Trail of Tears. Nearly a quarter of Cherokee Native Americans perished on this journey westward. So another factor eroding Native American control of the West is the flow of settlers, right? So you have the Transcontinental Railroad and the Homestead Act led to a large number of settlers, which overwhelmed the Native Americans. Then you have warfare. The U.S. government had better technology, which allowed them to win wars against the Native Americans. This especially includes the Indian Wars that we talked about, which lasted from about 1860 to about 1890. And then finally, the last factor eroding Native American control of the West was the destruction of natural environment. So there was competition between settlers, miners, and farmers, which destroyed the natural environment that Native Americans used to survive. So all four of these factors are eroding the Native American control of the West. So then we have the Dawes Act. The Dawes Act was released in 1887, and it sought to civilize the Native Americans by turning them into farmers and giving families 160 acres of reservation land. So they're trying to turn these hunters now into farmers and quote unquote civilize them with the Dawes Act, right? That it was meant to assimilate American Indians or integrate them into white society, right? And so how did they do that? Well, they took Native American children off reservations and immersed them in American culture. They were taught different skills. For example, males learned carpentry, farming, and blacksmithing. Females were taught sewing, laundry, and cooking.